All right, so let's dive into Johann Wolfgang von Goethe's The Sorrows of Young Werther. I'm already fascinated by just the articles and research you shared about this novel. I mean, this story is centuries old, but it still feels so relevant today, you know?
It's incredible how Goethe uses the epistolary novel to bring us right into Werther's head. And this form was hugely popular in the 1770s. Through his letters, it's like we experience everything right along with him, the ups, the downs, all of it.
Yeah, and reading those letters, I kept thinking about what it was like back then in 18th century Germany. Was there something about that time that led to this focus on Innerlichkeit, like this deep exploration of emotions in the inner life?
Well, Germany in the 1770s was a very divided place, both politically and culturally. It wasn't a single nation like we think of it today, but a bunch of small territories.
Yeah.
And the Holy Roman Empire, with its complex system, it didn't have a big cultural center like, say, London.
Yeah.
So this all created a sense of isolation, maybe even uncertainty. And for someone like Werther, that could lead to looking inward for meaning.
So instead of focusing outward, people like Werther turned inward. And we see this reflected in the literature of the time too, right?
Absolutely. The rise of Pietism, which emphasized personal faith and self-reflection, had a big impact on the culture. Werther's letters, with their intense focus on his feelings and spiritual searching, it's almost like a secular confession, as if he's looking for God through his own emotions.
It's really interesting. And this focus on inwardness, it shows up in Werther's relationship with nature too, like that powerful passage where he describes feeling totally connected to nature by the stream.
That passage perfectly captures Werther's early sense of harmony with the natural world. But as his emotional state gets worse, this connection changes. It gets twisted. He starts to project his inner turmoil onto nature, so he sees it reflecting his despair back at him. A calm stream becomes a raging river. A gentle breeze becomes a howling wind. It's like nature itself is turning against him.
And then there's Lotte, the woman he loves. The fact that she's already engaged to Albert, well, that's what really drives his downward spiral. Is this real love, or is it something else? What do you think?
That's a question that still gets people talking all these years later. It's tricky. I mean, Werther definitely idealizes Lotte, seeing his own romantic dreams in her instead of seeing her as her own person with her own wants and limits. It's as if he's fallen for the idea of Lotte, not Lotte herself.
He even says, and I might be paraphrasing a bit, that he basically worships himself because she loves him. So he seems to know at least a little that his feelings are more about him than her.
Exactly. And that self-awareness just adds another layer to their whole relationship. It's not a simple love triangle. It's more like a psychological drama where Werther wrestling with his own perceptions and what he desires.
Now, there's also the editor, the unnamed one, who collects and publishes these letters. What role do you think he plays in how we understand this whole story?
He's not just some passive bystander. The editor guides us through everything. He gives us his commentary and even gives us glimpses into what Lottie's thinking and feeling. It's done through a technique called free indirect speech. Through this, we see her own struggles, caught between how she feels about Werther and her commitment to Albert.
It's so clever how that adds depth to the story. We're not just stuck in Werther's head. We get to see Lotte's inner world, too, which makes her a much more sympathetic character, more complex. So it's this very relatable human drama set against the backdrop of this fragmented Germany, where people like Werther are searching for meaning in a world that feels increasingly unsteady. And what I find so interesting is how this personal story, one that came from Goethe's own experiences with unrequited love, turned into this cultural phenomenon. Werther fever swept across Europe. But we'll get more into that in a bit. So it's amazing, this Werther fever that spread all over Europe. People were copying Werther's style, his language, even his sadness. Why do you think this novel connected with so many people so strongly?
Well, imagine living in a time where showing your emotions was kind of frowned upon. Werther just explodes onto the scene, and it gives voice to all those bottled up feelings, especially for young people dealing with things like love and figuring out who they are, where they belong. Werther's struggles really struck a chord with people who maybe felt trapped by those same expectations.
Yeah, it's like he gave them a way to express what they were feeling, a longing for something real, something authentic. But did everyone love this outpouring of emotion?
Not exactly. Some critics thought the book was dangerous, even immoral. They worried about what it might do to young readers. They saw Werther killing himself as almost like romanticizing self-destruction instead of seeing it as a tragic result of this unrequited love and societal pressure.
Yeah, I can see how that would be unsettling, especially for people who believed in reason and order over just letting your emotions run wild. Werther really sparked strong reactions on both sides, didn't it? It's like it showed these tensions within society itself.
It definitely did. It's a powerful book, that's for sure. It got people talking and challenged the norms. And it wasn't just serious criticism either. The novel also inspired some pretty funny responses, right? Like, remember Nikolai's The Joys of Young Werther? It's this parody where Werther actually survives his suicide attempt and ends up living a normal, happy life.
Those satires are so interesting. It's like they were trying to inject some humor and logic into Werther's very dark worldview. It just goes to show how much this book captured the public's imagination, how it made them react in all sorts of ways.
And we can't forget the way it was written, the letter form. That made it feel even more real, like you were reading someone's actual diary. People felt like they were getting a glimpse into Werther's private thoughts and feelings, which made the story feel so immediate and personal. It blurred the lines between what was made up and what was real.
Going through all this research, I was surprised by how much people wanted to know the truth behind Werther. They were obsessed with figuring out how much of it was based on Goethe's own life, like that would somehow make the story more powerful or meaningful.
It's like they thought that if they could crack the code, find the facts behind the fiction, they could understand the book on a deeper level. And Goethe himself, well, he was a bit sensitive about those connections. He admitted that the story was inspired by his own life,
Yeah.
but also tried to separate himself from the more controversial parts. He even said that he had to save himself from the overwhelming emotions he felt while writing it.
Wow. So even for him, the process of writing this novel was a pretty intense experience. Do you think he had any idea, any sense of the impact Werther would have on readers, on culture, on everything?
It's hard to say, really. We can only guess. But one thing's for sure. Goethe really tapped into something universal with this story. He gave a voice to those feelings of longing and heartbreak and searching for meaning in a world that can feel very cold. And that's why Werther still speaks to people today, all these years later.
It shows you the power of stories that explore what it means to be human. And it's not just the story itself, but the way Goethe tells it. It's so well written, the way he uses language, how he reveals the characters through those letters.
Oh, absolutely. The language itself reflects what Werther's going through. At the beginning, his writing is very smooth, very energetic, full of youthful excitement. But as he gets more and more depressed, his writing breaks down, becomes fragmented, mirroring his state of mind. It's a really powerful effect, how Goethe lets us feel Werther's descent into despair through the words themselves.
It's amazing how Werther is still relevant today, still sparking discussions and debates. Some see him as a tragic hero, someone destroyed by his own intense emotions in a society that didn't understand him. Others see him as a flawed character, maybe even selfish because of his obsession with latte.
And what's so great about this book is that it doesn't give you easy answers. It doesn't tell you what to think. It makes you, as a reader, engage with the story, think about its complexities, and decide for yourself what you think about Werther and his choices. That's what makes it so captivating, so timeless.
And it's interesting how our own experiences shape how we see the story, right? Our own lives and the social and cultural world we live in.
Absolutely. Our own views and experiences always color how we understand and connect with the story. Werther acts like a mirror, reflecting back to each reader their own understanding of love, loss, and what it means to be human.
It's like Goethe knew that Werther would keep evolving, would mean different things to different people in different times and places. What do you think about how this novel speaks to people today, especially those who maybe feel alienated or like they don't fit in?
That's a great question. One we should definitely explore further.
That's such an interesting question, how this book connects with people today. I mean, it's been centuries, right? The world's so different now from Werther's time, but it's still such a powerful story. Why do you think that is?
Well, even though our world's changed so much since Goethe's time, some things stay the same. Things like love and loss, and that feeling of being alone, of searching for something more. Those are universal experiences, right? We might not write letters with fancy language or dress like they did back then, but we still feel those same deep emotions, those desires for connection.
Right, exactly. We're swiping on apps instead of writing poems, but that need for love, for someone to get you, it's still there. And just like back then, things don't always work out, which can lead to those same feelings of frustration, loneliness, maybe even despair.
And then there's that pressure to fit in, to meet everyone's expectations. Werther felt like an outsider. He couldn't find his place in those rigid social structures. And in a way, that feeling of not belonging, of being different, it might be even stronger today. I mean, with social media, you're constantly seeing these perfect lives, right?
Yeah, it's like we're all trying to present this perfect image online, this idealized version of ourselves, but inside, maybe we're dealing with the same doubts and insecurities that Werther struggled with.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And it connects back to what we were talking about before, Innerlichkeit, that focus on the inner life. So you had 18th century Germany, where showing your feelings wasn't really accepted. But today, even though we emphasize individuality, the world can feel very isolating too. We're surrounded by information, by images, but sometimes real connection is hard to find.
So, even though the context is different, Werther's struggle to balance his inner world with what society expects of him, that still resonates today. And it's fascinating how this one novel can be interpreted in so many ways. It's like it reflects the reader's own experiences and the world they live in.
That's the amazing thing about great literature. It speaks to people across time, you know? It can offer different meanings and insights depending on who's reading it and when. Some critics, they look at Werther as a product of his society, someone who was basically crushed by all those expectations. Others focus more on his psychology, maybe seeing him as someone struggling with mental health issues.
Makes you wonder, could Goethe have ever imagined what this book would become? It started fashion trends, it made people debate philosophy, even sparked concerns about people copying Werther's suicide. But here we are, centuries later, still discussing it, still finding ways to connect with it.
It really shows you how powerful a story can be when it captures something fundamental about being human. The details might change over time, the way people dress or communicate, but the core emotions, the longing for connection, the struggles with identity, those are timeless. I think The Sorrows of Young Werther reminds us that even in our complicated modern world, people are still searching for meaning, for love, for a sense of belonging.
That's so true. It's been incredible exploring this book with you. We've talked about the history, the literary techniques, the impact it's had. What would you say is the biggest takeaway from our deep dive?
You know, for me, it's realizing that even though the world keeps changing, some human experiences are constant. Werther reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles, in our joys, in our anxieties. It encourages us to connect with our own Innerlichkeit, to recognize how powerful our emotions are, and to keep searching for meaning, even when the world feels overwhelming.
I love that. The Sorrows of Young Werther, it's not some dusty old book. It's a reflection on what it means to be human. It reminds us that we're all vulnerable and that we're all looking for connection and purpose. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive. I hope you'll check out Werther for yourself, experience Goethe's beautiful writing, and see what resonates with you in this timeless story.